Tonight, the trial for admitted serial killer Jeremy Skibitsky continues in Winnipeg.
Today, we begin by atoning for these historic failures. We apologize for these past wrongs. We are sorry.
The University of Manitoba apologizes for having Indigenous artifacts. And the Grassy Narrows First Nation is suing the federal government and the province of Ontario for mercury in their water. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. We start in Winnipeg, where defense counsel for Jeremy Skibitsky is trying to convince a judge their client is not criminally responsible for killing Rebecca Contois, Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, and Buffalo Woman, a yet to be identified victim. TR Wheatley is following this trial for us, and a note to viewers, some of the details here are disturbing.
The forensic psychiatrist hired by Jeremy Skibitsky's defense team and flown in from England told the court that in his opinion, the accused suffers from schizophrenia and has been since 2019. Dr. Sahom Daz came to this conclusion after interviewing Skibitsky twice, once in the fall of 2022 and again in late April this year, just before this trial started. Daz said Skibitsky discussed in detail killing Rebecca Contois, Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, and Buffalo Woman. Daz told court that Skibitsky's recollection was often theatrical and that he was, quote, very specific, but not overly to try to convince me, unquote. Daz testified that Skibitsky said he often heard voices for long periods of time. Daz told court more details about Skibitsky's first murder. Skibitsky told him she was wearing all red and he heard the voice of God. Daz's opinion is that these are all psychiatric signs of distress. In previous weeks, court heard Buffalo Woman was his first victim, and at the time of her death, Skibitsky was coming down from a magic mushroom high. Defense questioned Daz about Skibitsky's drug use. Daz said this is where the case gets complicated because he felt that Skibitsky often minimized his drug intake, so it's been, quote, hard to indicate what is drug psychosis versus mental illness, unquote. Defense also brought up Skibitsky's online searches that court heard about weeks ago, where Skibitsky was checking for city garbage day pickups and looked up the definition of serial killer and asked Daz if Skibitsky knew what he was doing was legally wrong. Daz said that Skibitsky knew that it was legally wrong. However, he had a lack of criminal responsibility because he believed he killed the women to get them to heaven. Daz quoted Skibitsky as saying, "I was absolutely doing the right thing. It was a mission of God." Necrophilia also came up in Daz's testimony. Daz told the court Skibitsky felt compelled to have sex with the women after he killed them. Daz told court he also reviewed Skibitsky's health records provided by defense that date back to 2000 when he was 13 years old. There were notes about different illnesses that Skibitsky may have had, including depression, borderline personality disorder, paranoia, bipolar, and PTSD. However, the majority of Skibitsky's visits to the hospital emergency rooms happened in 2014 and 2015. Daz said many of the visits had to do with self-harm and suicide attempts, including one time where Skibitsky stabbed himself. That same time period is when symptoms of schizophrenia began to show up. Then in February 2015, court heard an emergency doctor diagnosed Skibitsky as a paranoid schizophrenic. The Crown asked Daz if Skibitsky was ever formally diagnosed by a psychiatrist, to which Daz replied, "I don't know." The Crown also raised concern that what Daz was going off of was a summary of information the defense gathered on their own, including self-reporting rather than actual diagnosis. The Crown is arguing that Skibitsky was intentional and racially motivated when he killed all four women. The trial continues tomorrow with another psychiatrist, the one that was ordered to do an assessment by the court after the Crown asked the judge for it. TR Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Thanks, TR. For more on this trial, you can head over to our website, aptnnews.ca, for stories from web reporter Kathleen Martins. And if you're triggered by this report, supports are available 24/7 through the MMIWG2S support line. That number is 1-844-413-6649. The University of Manitoba says it has hundreds of Indigenous ancestral remains, belongings, and artifacts in its possession. Now they want to return them to their rightful First Nations, Métis, and Inuit communities. Sav Jonza was at the announcement on Monday.
The University of Manitoba is publicly apologizing for their collection of Indigenous ancestral remains, a collection they are now calling inappropriate.
The University of Manitoba did not live up to its ideals in their true form. Today, we begin by atoning for these historic failures. We apologize for these past wrongs. We are sorry.
University President Michael Benarosh says the process of rematriating and repatriating, or the returning of the human remains and burial artifacts, will start immediately. The U of M began collecting the remains of Indigenous ancestors at the turn of the 20th century.
We use these ancestral remains and belongings in classrooms and in laboratories, and sometimes put them on display, all without consent from First Nation, Inuit, and Métis families, communities, and nations.
They say they acquired the remains and artifacts in different ways, including some brought to them by the RCMP. These acquisitions ended in the early 1980s.
Today, when I witnessed so many emotions in the ceremony this morning, I get it. To learn about ancestors being in drawers, in paper bags, in stapled little baggies, it's horrific. It's devastating.
Lucy Bell is co-chair and co-founder of the Haida Repatriation Committee. She has been bringing ancestors' remains home to Haida Gwaii north of Vancouver Island for 30 years. As of 2021, she helped bring home more than 500 sets of remains. Now she's adding a few more.
Tomorrow, we take home 4 of our ancestors from this institution, and it's not easy work. It never gets easier to be handling the bones of our ancestors.
Bell hopes that other institutions holding ancestral remains, like Simon Fraser University in Vancouver, will follow the U of M's footsteps. Sav Jonza, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Grassy Narrows First Nation is suing the federal government and province of Ontario. Statement of claim alleges the government's breached the nation's treaty rights and failed to protect against or remedy the effects of mercury and other pollutants discharged by a pulp and paper mill into the English and Wabigoon River system. The lawsuit calls on the 2 levels of government to, among other things, remediate and protect the river system, Grassy Narrows territory, and the fish and wildlife within it. The Dryden Mill discharged various substances into the Wabigoon River over the years, including 9,000 kilograms of inorganic mercury in the 1960s. The suit says the contamination of the river system did and continues to negatively affect Grassy Narrows, including impacts to the environment and the ability to safely fish for food, to fish commercially, to earn a livelihood, and to maintain a way of life. The suit says mercury levels in fish on which Grassy Narrows people rely remain elevated beyond safe levels for human consumption. People also suffer a myriad of conditions associated with the contamination. The lawsuit is also seeking compensation but does not list the dollar figure. The defendants have 20 days to file a statement of defense. To Ottawa now, where this year's federal budget sets aside $1.3 million over 3 years to develop a regional red dress alert system. An Senate committee is studying what such an alert system should include. The Senate Committee on Indigenous Peoples heard from a number of witnesses, including Jennifer Jesty of the Union of Nova Scotia Mi'kmaq. The organization launched its own highly successful emergency alert system in 2020. Jesty told the committee their system works because it is simple and user-friendly.
I think the most important part of the reason why our alert system is so successful, because it was easy. We didn't complicate it. we didn't ask for a lot of input. We kind of said, hey, we're going to create this, and here it is. And when we put it out to community to make the registration process super easy, we felt if we made it complicated, if it was an app that had to be multiple pages long before you're able to subscribe, people aren't going to do it.
Time for a quick break. Still to come, the city of Vancouver becomes the first city in Canada to adopt UNDRIP. Welcome back. The city of Vancouver has become the first city in Canada to officially adopt the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, known as UNDRIP. 5 years ago, a task force including the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh First Nations, along with a team from Vancouver City Council was created. This week they unveiled the strategy to implement UNDRIP, which includes everything from developing housing solutions, incorporating Indigenous protocols, business development, and prioritizing arts, culture, and language as its commitment to reconciliation.
Having the same rights, have a right to be who we are, a right to be known the way we want to be known, a right to have our culture, a right to have our spirituality, our language, and shown and represented it the way we want it, not the way the colonials decree that it should be.
From the Nawe Odina project to the Southern Chiefs organization's downtown developments, Winnipeg has become a center for Indigenous economic opportunity. And the Institute for Research on Public Policy hosted a panel in the Prairie City this week to discuss Indigenous approaches to economic growth. Business leaders and entrepreneurs Elaine Beaudry, Cody Mercer, Michelle Cameron, and Jamie Wilson spoke as panelists. They highlighted land acquisition, transforming government relations, and expanding the First Nations workforce as key areas of opportunity. Wilson, who leads Indigenous strategy research and business development at Red River College Polytechnic, shared his thoughts on the meaning of economic reconciliation.
As a country, we were built on a partnership between First Nations and kind of newcomers to the territory. Where we are right now at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights is actually like the land right here was an economic trading hub. So and if you look historically at companies like Hudson Bay Company, who tapped into a vast trade network in North America, it's understanding our own history and getting back to and empowering those relationships. So very much about relationships between First Nations and federal government, provincial governments, and First Nations and business communities.
On May 16th, the federal government announced the signing of a $149 million agreement with the Huron-Wendat Nation. It sets out to redress the harm that nation suffered from the illegal sale of its land. It happened in an area known as the Rockmount Reserve, 80 kilometers north of Quebec City. Kijitai Alexandra V.A. Chizo explains the agreement.
After 10 years of negotiations, the federal government and the Huron-Wendat Nation recently settled the century-old Rockmount Reserve claim.
Je salue la sagesse des membres de la nation Huron-Wendat qui ont décidé de voter pour la proposition qu'on leur a faite. Puis à 88%, je pense que le message est clair. Les gens croient en l'avenir de notre nation puis croient que ces argents-là doivent servir pour les prochaines générations aussi.
The settlement pays the nation $149 million and offers a potential to acquire of up to 9,600 acres of land.
Ça constitue un jalon important sur la voie de la réconciliation entre le gouvernement du Canada et la nation Huron-Wendat. Aussi un premier pas dans le renouvellement de nos relations de nation à nation.
Grand Chief Rémi Vincent was elected in 2020. One of his priorities was negotiating this claim.
J'étais très à l'aise de la présenter à ma population.
C'est important pour nous de bien régler les revendications particulières. Donc, c'est certain qu'on souhaite régler plus de revendications particulières et à un rythme raisonnable. Mais au final, c'est important que la Première Nation qui vient de régler une revendication particulière avec le Canada se sente bien, soit satisfait du résultat.
Working with a legal team and negotiators, the Huron-Wendat Nation reached an agreement that reflected the loss they had suffered. In 1904, the Rockmount Reserve was sold for $7,501.
La vente s'était faite illégalement parce que le référendum était pas valable.
The negotiations were therefore about compensation for the loss of use by the nation.
Le volume forestier qui était exploité pendant toutes ces années-là sur le territoire, parce que c'est un territoire forestier, il y a eu un peu de pertes aussi fauniques.
According to the Grand Chief, the amount should already have been deposited in the Rockmount Trust account.
Donc, c'est complètement indépendant du Conseil de la Nation Huron-Wendat.
He also mentioned that community projects will be put forward. For example, loans for housing or wind energy projects.
Ça, c'est des projets qui pourraient être extrêmement intéressants, qui sont porteurs pour la nation, sont porteurs pour les membres, sont porteurs pour le futur.
In addition to the $149 million settlement, it will also be possible to acquire land through mutual agreement.
Donc ça, c'est-à-dire que la nation Huron-Wendat peut acheter des terres de personnes qui sont disposées à les vendre et ensuite demander à ce que ces terres soient mises de côté en tant que réserve.
Grand Chief Vincent said land acquisition could help expand the community.
Parce qu'il n'y a pas de place. Là. On a 1100 membres de notre communauté qui attendent sur une liste pour venir rester sur notre communauté. Et on n'a pas pas d'endroit pour les loger.
Grand Chief Rémi Vincent hopes that this case will continue to benefit the nation and future generations. Kijate Alexandra Veillet-Chizo, APTN National News, Montreal.
Time for one more quick break. Still to come, an Indigenous fashion designer is set to be part of one of the biggest events on Turtle Island. Stick around.
I understand Santa Fe to be a really big milestone in people's career. It's really prestigious, and it's definitely the top artists who are accepted to go.
Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Today's submission was sent in by Robert Lampert from Nipissing First Nation. Robert captured this picture of a fierce grizzly bear at the Calgary Zoo. If you want to be featured as our photo of the day, whether it's a nature shot, a new family member, your latest hobby, or a delicious meal you cooked, email your pictures to share@aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, 23 in Halifax, showers, and 26 for Fredericton. 24 with rain in Kuujjuaq, cloudy, and 11 in Nain. Showers and 32 for Montreal, cloudy high of 31 in Val-d'Or. 23 with rain in Sault Ste. Marie, showers and 27 in North Bay. Rain in Thunder Bay and Sioux Lookout with a high of 21. 18 with showers in God's Lake, 14 and rain in Norway House. 19 with rain in Winnipeg, 16 and showers in Dauphin. 17 for Regina, 16 in Saskatoon. Showers in 13 for Meadow Lake and La Ronge. In northern Alberta, showers in 19 in High Level, 18 for Grand Prairie. 18 in Edmonton, sun's out, and 20 in Lethbridge. Showers in 17 in Vancouver, sun's out, and 22 for Kamloops. 16 with rain in Prince George, 13 in showers in Smithers. 21 in Old Crow, 13 for Whitehorse. 14 in Yellowknife, 22 in Norman Wells. 9 in Sachs Harbor, a sunny 16 in Polituck. +1 in Chesterfield, cloudy and 2 above for Arbiette. 1 in Resolute and Arctic Bay. It's the most prestigious Indigenous art market in the world. The 102nd Santa Fe Indian Market in New Mexico will host hundreds of Indigenous artists from across North America, not to mention draw in an estimated 100,000 people. While northern representation at the market has been lacking in previous years, this year that's about to change. Here's Sarah Connors with that story.
These are all antique beads here that I've sourced.
It's clear to see why artist and fashion designer Randy Nelson's craftsmanship is top-notch. Nelson, who is Taaktauz and based in Whitehorse, is passionate about incorporating natural materials into her work. That's why she, along with a cohort of 10 other artists from the Yukon and the Northwest Territories, were recently selected to attend the Santa Fe Indian Market in Santa Fe, New Mexico. The market draws in around 100,000 customers and 800 artists from across North America.
I understand Santa Fe to be a really big milestone in people's career. It's really prestigious, and it's definitely the top artists who are accepted to go.
The Yukon First Nations Culture and Tourism Association and Northwest Territories Arts Program partnered with the Southwestern Association for Indian Arts to bring this cohort to Santa Fe. The organization says there's been minimal participation from Yukon and NWT artists, something they want to change. In addition to the market, the cohort will also get the opportunity to meet with retail galleries and participate in fashion shows and an awards ceremony.
It's the first cohort ever in 102 years of the market, so it's pretty exciting that they did this collaboration. So these are some of the materials I use. This is caribou hair, so this is the whitest part that comes from the neck.
Nelson hopes her use of quills, antler, and ermine fur will help get her international exposure.
I think just to be able to bring something different, something that's unique to me and my nation and my upbringing, and be able to bring it onto a different stage.
In Yellowknife, Dene carver John Sabarin is working on one of the handful of pieces he'll be taking to the market. His chlorite stone sculptures are a reflection of his Dene roots, stories, and legends.
I'm looking forward to meeting new art galleries and making connections with people for maybe possibility of other works.
Sabarin says there's a lot of talented artists, but the market up here is smaller than the south.
So there's only so much art that you can sell in the north before you have to send them out. 90% of my carvings I ship out from Yellowknife.
He's glad the market will provide a unique opportunity for northern artists to have their work noticed beyond the territories.
I'm really excited to be part of this team, this cohort team from the Yukon and Northwest Territories artists. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
The Santa Fe Indian Market will run from August 16th to 18th. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
That's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Tuesday. For news anytime, visit our website, aptnnews.ca, or subscribe to our APTN News YouTube page. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy McGuitch, thanks for being with us. Shout out to Roddy. Have a great night.